Hey everybody, welcome back to the episode. I have it's pretty unique here because I have my two best friends from the Navy on at the same time. One that I met in boot camp and one that became my roommate at the Office of Naval Intelligence, my first, I guess, real roommate. I had one dude that was a roommate, but I don't count him. But Shane's my first real Navy bunkmate, I guess you would say. Shane Foster. So Shane, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Shane, can you just for sake of just a little background, how did you come to the point that you are as vice president of your firm from the Navy?
Yeah. Well, I went into the Navy. Actually, I went in. I don't know if you guys remember or not, but the delayed entry program. So I was barely 17 when I actually signed up, right? And I had a late birthday in June, so I actually graduated while I was still, 17, and had joined like the year before that in what they call delayed entry. So I was young, had really. I don't actually remember why I joined. Totally. I mean, really, I was in a little bit of a rebellious period and everything, right? When I did that. And
Was this when you had the long hair in the
yeah.
back?
Oh yeah. It was like a
It was
cross
an
of Vanilla Ice and Billy Ray Cyrus. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Yeah. So I had no clue, right? And then, September of '93 rolls around and I'm going to boot camp, and, you guys actually have really vivid memories of boot camp. It actually impressed me a lot. I mean, really vivid. I don't remember anything. It was like a blur.
well,
I
that's
remember,
because you didn't have time to sit on your ass for 3 weeks and do nothing but think. You were busting your ass the whole time.
I remember like two things, and one of them was when I was on the bus. I was on a bus. I guess we were going to wherever, in Orlando, and "Hey Mr. DJ" was playing on the radio. Do you remember that song?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember. That. And whenever I hear "Hey Mr. DJ," which is like never now, it reminds me of boot camp. So, um, but anyway, so, um, I went to, we were photographers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of funny too, because when I joined, you kind of get the rates sort of listed for you, and you can make some decisions on what you want to do. And I remember my recruiter, he's like, "Photographer." He's like, "Holy shit." He's like, that never comes up. He's like, "That is a skate rate, right? Skate rate." And I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Photography in the Navy?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, he's like, "It's
You're all
easy."
sweet. You're all sweet. I picked right. Nice.
Yeah. I'm like, "I'll take that," yeah. So, then, uh, A school, and I had every intention of, like, back then, of being, like a photographer. Like, that's what I was going to do. I, kind of liked it. And I was like, maybe this is something that I can do. And, I kind of it's kind of funny how things work out. There was some luck involved, in terms of the first station that we got was O&I, right? And you get there and they've got this
Office of Naval Intelligence for
Office of Naval Intelligence. You get there and they're building this really first true digital photo lab,
you
and
were
back
one. I mean, really, we were one of the first people in this building, and
then,
it
yeah.
was as
Oh
state
yeah,
of the
that's
art
right.
intelligence facility that it was. I mean, they
Yeah,
had finished it within a year of you getting there.
right. And I started at the kind of the dump that was the original O&I for like 3 months because they were building this thing. And yeah, and it was awesome, right? State of the art. I mean, beautiful facility in Suitland, Maryland. And that, they were also building this digital photo lab that was, back then was, pretty amazing. So I get there, and I'm doing photography, and I'm, kind of starting the black and white section. You're doing color photography, doing standard photography. And then eventually I got into the digital lab. And, you know, back then, I mean, I sort of had an idea of computers and things, right? And obviously, but I didn't really do much with them in high school. I didn't do any kind of programming or anything like that because I just wasn't really aware, really. And and got there, and then started being in the lab, and I started really just wondering, you know, how these things work, and got kind of fascinated by it, and took a computer science class at the community college there, and was like hooked, you know, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And it wasn't photography anymore. You know, I still, obviously that was like year 2, and I started taking classes and started, you know, doing all these things, and really just at that point preparing myself to, because I knew at that point I wasn't going to stay in. I wanted to do everything I could while I was in, you know, and take advantage of it and do good work. But, you know, I pretty much knew at that point that I was going to major in computer science and, you know, do as much as I could before then and prepare myself. And when I got out, you know, I got lucky because I had a friend too that, you know, offered me kind of an internship at a very small software development company, where I was able to like do a lot of different things while I was going to school. And I mean, they even paid for some of my school, you know, along with like the GI Bill, and it just all sort of happened. And I, you know, got my degree, and then, you know, got a job there full time, and you know, and ended up, you know, developing a lot of different types of software, and loved it. And you know, eventually moved up into management and stuff like that, and, you know, started heading up like product development areas, you know. And I've obviously switched companies a few times since then, because that company actually no longer really exists anymore, you know. So and just ended up, you know, here. So it was all sort of, it's just interesting when you think back about how it all worked out, because it's a little bit of circumstance too, right? And, you know, a little bit, I guess, just looking back, a little bit of luck in terms of how things sort of you know, unfolded. You know,
Yeah.
so.
And I think what a lot of people don't realize, when you're in the military, there's a lot of opportunity to educate yourself.
There is, yeah.
You know, and I know both of us went to school. Gary, you took classes too while you were in the military as well, didn't you? Or did you wait till you get out?
Well, I had a degree already when I went in, and I wasn't allowed to.
That's true. It was undergrad.
Yeah, I already had my undergrad, but I went and got my master's at night through, it was called tuition assistance.
Yeah.
So I applied for that, got that, and then got a scholarship through the university as well. It paid roughly for about half of it, 50-60%. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of opportunities to better yourself in the military.
It really is, yeah.
That's why I've always said, you know, people who say, well, I don't have the opportunities, you know, I wasn't born in the right area, my parents, that's all, that's all bullshit.
Yeah.
I've told everyone, if you really want to get an education, just go in the military. And it's just, then they go, well, I don't want to do that. Well, don't complain that you don't have an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and it's actually one of the best opportunities, because my roommate, he went in, same as you. I think he did the deferred enlistment program too. And he was 18 when he came in, so he left at 22. He didn't pay a dime for college with the GI Bill and everything. He did really well and got his degree for pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
Did you not go in and Gary? Did you not go in the delayed entry program, or did you go straight?
I did. It was, I think after I signed up, it was like 6 months after I signed up.
Yeah, that's mine. It was 6 months.
Yeah. It was right around there, and it gives you plenty of time to try and back out. But I never even thought. Yeah, I thought when I signed up too, I went 6 months. Man, that's a long time for me to rethink all this, and
you to not get paid.
And you don't get paid. There's nothing going on. You're just waiting.
Yeah.
And so I had to move, you know, I moved back in with my parents in between, because I was living in New Mexico. And I said, you know what's the point of doing any of this stuff? I might as well take it easy and get prepared and relax before I went in. But yeah,
I had to go out and get a job, and imagine going out and trying to find a job knowing that you're going to be leaving in 6 months. So you can't tell them that. It's like, hey, you know, I'm going to get a job working at UPS. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to work for you guys for 6 months, and then I'm out. You know, can you give me a job? No, you had to go in there and totally lie about it to get that job. So it's a weird thing. I don't know if they still do it that way or if it's more streamlined.
I don't know. I haven't heard of anyone saying anything about delayed entry.
And I do wonder if they do it with the high school kids like that too still, right? I mean, when you're, you know, I mean, obviously my parents had to, like, you know, get on board with all this too. It wasn't like, obviously, but you know, it's a pretty young age to kind of, you know, I know they're in there, but I just, you know, just, and
it's
anyway.
a pretty lofty decision, you know, to make as a 17-year-old. And, you know, luckily I was 23 and so was you, Dwayne. We were older, not old by any sense. We still was stupid as dirt, but, you know, I was old enough. I'd had college behind me, you know, so I went in with a little more world experience, I guess would be the best way to put it. Kind of a little bit, know how the world worked a little bit. And didn't take, you know, we had guys that were there. I don't know if this was you, but they'd never left home. This was the first time they'd ever left their town.
Sure.
You know, and they're like just deers in the headlights, not knowing what. That one guy would cry himself to sleep every night and say he missed his mom and all this. And I remember just going, dude,
oh my God.
Remember him? We were all just, dude, suck it up. Stop with the whining, you know? And you felt bad for the guy because he was a mama's boy. He had never been away. But, you know, that being said, that's why it was a good decision for him to go. Who knows the way his life turned out. I ran into a couple people later on in the military. That was pretty interesting. A guy I worked with in college at Auto Trader magazine in San Diego. We ran into each other on naval station. It was Top Gun back then still. And we walked right into each other in medical, and I'm all, oh, hey, dude, we used to work together way back when. And then another guy, we went to boot camp. I ran into him on North Island in a hallway, and just, it's small world.
Well, you know, I don't know if I told this story on the first episode or not, but I went in to boot camp on the buddy program with my apartment roommate. He got sent on one end of the barracks, and I was on the other end of the barracks, and I never talked to him again except for one night on duty. That was the last time and I still haven't talked to him since then. So it's
buddy program.
Yeah, exactly. That's one hell of a buddy program, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not no. They had brothers in A school. I was with brothers. They were in the same A school class with me. And to make it even better, twin brothers, identical twins. And it was bizarre to see these guys. And, but yeah, they got separated later on. But yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that. But you're right. Gosh, who was that? Who was you went in the buddy program?
Mike Spears.
That's it, Spears. Yeah.
So the thing was, we weren't the same height. So you know how boot camp works. I was 6 foot tall, and he was like 5'8" maybe, and so he was behind me marching. So I mean, like he was halfway back, and Gary was in the way back.
I was in the rear, but I saw Spears. I saw Spears all the time because I was a short guy. Luckily, I wasn't the shortest guy. And there was women too, so I was
if you were the shortest guy, you'd have been the guide on, so you'd have been right at the front.
Yeah, and he was like 5'1" or something like that. I remember him. He's a little guy, but yeah, I forgot about that. You're right. If you're tall and another guy was short, you weren't going to see each other very often.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, Shane and I, you know, we got lucky because when I went through A school, I guess you probably went through A school just a few months before I did. Yeah, I was right on your tail, and when I got out of A school, I was the number 2 guy that got to pick my duty station. And the first guy didn't choose O&I, and there was only one billet. My buddy Matt Lynagh, he wanted to go to Oceana, and so he was 3rd. So I got to pick 2nd, and I chose O&I. So that was lucky, you know. And I mean, if you want, and it was not a cush duty station. You worked a lot there, but to get what we got was that early digital photography thing was unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned it was lucky, but also, you know, there was some work involved too, because you had second pick, right? You got
I mean, definitely. Second pick means you had the second highest grades in the class.
Yeah, right. And you know, but
you must have some dummies in your class, Gene.
Well, no, I mean, it was more talent, you know. Because you went out and you took pictures, you took tests, but it was mostly on your talent evaluation from your photos. So I was, and I think I was a pretty good photographer at the time. I look at some of the better photographers now that have came out that still do it from our time in, but I mean, you know, I knew the basics, and the thing is, I listened to what the instructor says. I did what they said, and I made the pictures look how they wanted it. So that's all you really had to do.
Well, and they told you in A school, they motivated you, and at least we knew that the higher you finished in class, the better choice you got.
Right.
Yeah, and you were, and I don't think we've ever said this either. Gary was a cryptologist, so that was his rate.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and that stuff. Oh my God, my classes were just awful, and I can't even remember where I finished, but I got my first choice. I remember that because I picked back to San Diego, and I ended up getting Top Gun. So it worked out real well. But I think I kissed my instructor's butt too a little bit. I made sure I greased the skids a little bit just to make sure she understood that I wasn't a total screw up, and I think that helped me. I don't even remember where I finished in class, to be honest.
Yeah, if it was a female, I don't know what skids you greased, but I'm sure you greased them.
Yeah, she yelled at me a couple times, but yeah, she was cool. But that's part of it too. You can make your way in the military. I don't. I don't know how it is now because obviously I've been out since 2006 when I got out of the reserves too. But that's what I mean. That's where I get frustrated with people and the kids who just say they got no options, nothing. And people go, well, the military is not an option. I go, yeah, it is. Even, that's what I mean. Every kid here in this country has an opportunity to go to college.
Yeah. It may be a little bit different though. I mean, when we all three came in, we just got through the Gulf War, and it was still kind of peacetime. So I just wonder how that decision is now, knowing that you're probably good, especially now, with the war footing that we're kind of putting ourselves back on, it's got to be a much harder decision now than it was back then too.
I would think so. And not only that, but we're in multiple theaters. We're in multiple wars at one time. But what makes it confusing too is we don't really declare war anymore.
Exactly.
So whatever, now they've gotten smart between Congress and the president, so they just term it differently. So it's technically, you can fund it, but technically it's not a war to piss the public off, and it just turns into a nightmare. But I would agree. I would think today it would be a harder decision, especially if you're going into something like infantry, like a forward reconnaissance unit or something along those lines. Yeah, it would, or special forces. I mean, heck, we're using.
Well, actually, I think it would be easier with special forces because I think they are still the sexy branch of the military. And I think that if you told some young kid, hey, look, you can go into the SEAL program or you can go in to become a Ranger or something like that, and you sold that to them, you're going to boost their ego up enough to want to do it.
Oh, to do it. But,
because I came in.
A lot of them don't make it though.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. But you don't have to, but as a recruiter, you don't have to worry about them making it.
Oh, you don't care.
You don't care. You just need to sell them on that idea. I was sold on the idea of dive fair. And that's what I ended up doing. But
that and hot bunking and being around a lot of naked men. Besides that,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
you're sold instantly, especially when they showed you the pictures. You were
exactly.
I'm about 2 thumbs up. I'm in. Where do I sign up, recruiter?
And
I get paid.
I didn't have that much. There wasn't a lot of thought process, and when I signed up, like I said, so I'm not even sure that I even considered all those factors.
So was it the deal where the recruiter just came to your high school and set a bunch of you guys down?
Yeah, I actually don't remember how. I imagine that it probably started that way, and the next thing I knew, I was signing up. So it's like that's what the hell, kind of.
Well, that was back when they put saltpeter in the food in boot camp too.
Yeah.
Remember they said that was a rumor, but I
think that was true. Yeah.
I think it was true too. My dick didn't work at all in
not
boot
at all.
camp. Nothing.
No.
And actually, I'm still having effects. I think, maybe my wife's putting saltpeter in my food now because some after effects or something. But
well, that's just called being in your 40s.
You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So for you, because that's different than me and Dwayne. We went in, it's only 5 years, but at that stage of your development in life, that 5 years between 18 and 23, it's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
How did it help you? Because, we'd already had some life experiences, had jobs, college, all that kind of good stuff. How did the military help you bridge that gap once you got out, far as the things you learned in the military to help you in working in as a civilian in normal society? What tools did you take?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, when you're 17, I mean, likely that, you've never been away from home, most likely, right? So, and I think and that's the first thing is just, you literally are out on your own, really,
Yeah.
I mean, as far as, so you're 18 and you got to learn how to take care of yourself, and there's nobody really around to, you got to learn finances, you got to learn how to deal with all that. And you got to, there's a lot going on. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, like you guys said, is like, there's so many opportunities for people once they're in. And a lot of people, a lot of people bitched and complained while they were in, and didn't take advantage of the possibilities. And they just they were victims, and they were, all this stuff. And I mean, there's so much you can do, though, right? And
the programs, and today the programs are way better, because I've talked to people who have gone through and told me, what were opportunities. And plus I've taught at the college level, and a lot of my students were either active duty or were using the GI Bill at the time. And they explained it to me. And I had one, he lined it all out for me. I go, holy cow. He was making money. I mean, he didn't have to work. He was making money to go to school.
That's
and I went,
crazy.
what? Yeah. And I went, what a great opportunity. And I thought, oh, you must be on a special. He's all, no, this is everyone. If you take advantage of it, the GI Bill is so much better today than when we came in.
Yeah.
And not only that, but remember did you guys ever go to the career counselor? People who haven't been in, the career counselor is the person you go to in order to get information about not only your career path, as far as billeting and what your next assignment's going to be and what's best for your career, but also they may be different now, but they did all the educational benefits too. At least they did. Ours did at my base. So I went in there one day, and I remember, I just sat down and said, okay, give me all the programs that are available to me. And he just brought out a big old, 3-ring binder, slapped it on his desk. And we just went through it page by page and kind of figured it out. And I'd heard of tuition assistance, but I wasn't really sure how it worked. And we just figured out, I filled out my chit. It was just a normal chit to apply for it. And I don't know if this way it is. This is how simple it was. A chit is basically a little form this big that was, I think, a 4-copy or a 3-copy.
Yeah.
You fill out.
I request permission to do this.
I request permission to do this. Sign it. Boom. Then you turn it into your LPO, your leading petty officer, or whoever was in the next chain of command for you. And it would be usually your LPO. And then it just went up the chain till the CO got it. And the CO signed it. You got your copy of your chit back, and you were official. That's all you needed. You just needed that chit, and copy was put in your military file, and you were good to go. I mean, that was it. Yeah. And it was like I said, I don't know. I imagine it's computerized now. I
imagine it's computerized, but I also imagine that that it's probably more. I think they probably go. I think they probably encourage you more than they did us as well. Now,
maybe. Well, the thing is, possibly. I like the fact that I had to do it on my own. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to know, because I don't know about you guys. I learned a lot when I went through OutDoc when I was done. When you went through your checkout, and I remember sitting there and they give you the briefing. You're all sitting together, all the people who are getting ready to discharge out, and they go over all the programs, and you're like, wait a second here. If you would have told me that shit about 3 years ago, I could have taken advantage of that. There was when they read us out, and we went through that final, OutDoc, it was like, holy shit. It was amazing, the programs that were available. I was floored. And I think it is still this way. But when we were in, the best field to get into was medical. If you wanted to be a nurse, you would not pay a single dime for any of your education to become an RN, and get through college. And actually, I think there was a medical school program back then as well that would funnel you through medical school to become, but you had to commit, obviously, come back and be a doctor in the military for so long. But my cousin did it. My cousin was in the medical field in the Army. And yeah, the opportunities if you're in medical are astronomical. And not only that, the downside is there's an upside and downside, but if you want to figure out how to deal with trauma, and you want to be an emergency room technician or an emergency room doctor, being in the military and it's been proven, is the best training to work in that environment. But obviously there's, PTSD and a lot of other issues because you're dealing with, violent injuries. You're dealing with a lot of death. Those are those are people that you live with and you eat with. So that's the downside, but the training is bar none some of the best.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest downsides, and Shane, you got lucky. I mean, you came out, you were a veteran, you got this internship with this company that in a career that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But like what I'm disappointed in is companies that say that they're veteran friendly, which means they'll give a veteran a job, but they won't respect them enough to realize that they have potential to be so much more and then move them in that direction. Like the company I work for, they like to tout that they have all these veterans that work for them, but yet, if you wanted to be, say, a maintenance guy and you were an ET in the Navy, which is basically maintenance, if you don't have like college behind you, they're not going to let you do it. So it's one of those deals where it's like, dude, I helped keep an aircraft carrier running for 5 years, and you're not going to give me the opportunity to fix a robot. It's crazy. Yeah. And I see that all the time at work. People that aren't given, I'm not saying they should deserve a special treatment, but they should be given a different look than maybe just some 17-year-old, 18-year-old that just started working there on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of companies, obviously, say that, but, don't really live it. Right. So it's pretty unfortunate, really.
Well, it's a disconnect because I was lucky. I worked in places after I got out that there was veterans there.
Yeah.
So they already knew the deal and they understood my training and what I had done. So it was a little different. Actually, before I went in the military, when I was in college, one of my bosses was former military as well and a reservist. So I kind of had an idea. And if you've never been in the military or had any connection with it as a boss or as a company, it's really, really difficult to relate to what goes on in the military. Because what I always told my bosses, I went, well, what you're guaranteed with me is, I know responsibility. I know to show up on time. And, I'm trainable, usually most of the time. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's screw ups in the military too, just like anywhere else.
Yeah.
But you can't just if I get out, I get an honorable discharge and my DD-214 states that, the odds are I'm a responsible, driven individual, usually. Because people understand in the military, you just cannot show up. You show up late, there's consequences. And I'm not talking, I'm 15 minutes late. I'm talking 1 minute late. You can be disciplined and get in trouble for being just 1 minute late. The rule, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late. Because the rule was you're supposed to be 15 minutes early to your shift change or whatever you were doing, or muster or whatever. It was always 15 minutes. So I think that kind of worked. And I remember, God, I was early to I don't know about you guys, but after I got out of the military, I was early to everything. And I mean, way early.
Oh, I still am. And it drives my wife crazy. Like tonight, my daughter had a baseball or a t-ball game at 4:00 and I'm trying to get out, start leaving at 3:30 to get there. She's like, we got time. And I hear that all the time because it's still ingrained to me that 15 minutes or 10 minutes early is 15 minutes late or whatever the saying is.
I can't remember. Was it 5 minutes early in your 15 minutes or something like that? Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, I remember too, when I first got out and I was working at that little software company, right? Like I remember going to, my sort of boss and I was like, hey, I'm going to leave. I'm leaving now. He's like, okay. Yeah. You don't have to come tell me just because this is like a tech company, right? Like a totally different culture. I mean, it's like,
can I go home?
And it takes some time to, adjust to that, right? But the whole time thing is always a part of, you just learn that time is sort of, you got to be respectful of other people's time too, right? I mean, and that's part of it as well. Just be on time,
Well, and you're relieving someone else. I mean, they can't leave until you show up. And then there's a time too where you have to pass down whatever information happened during their shift. So the later you are, that you kind of screw up the whole process. It just turns into basically you mess up that shift, then the next shift's probably going to be screwed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, you always had to be really responsible. Not only that, but we were all, you guys were at O&I. I was in Intel. If I screwed up, it was pretty major. I mean, if I screwed something up, that was top secret material. It was pretty bad. So it made me I went in anal. I came out, and I've said this several times. I don't know if you guys agree with me on this, but I said, if you're a screw up when you go into the military, there's a good chance you're going to be more screwed up if you don't fall in line. You're going to come out because you're going to learn the game, and you just game the system all the way through, and you become an expert gamesman because you have to be much more better at playing the game in the military and getting away with it than in civilian life. But if you go in motivated, you're going to come out better than what you came in. I firmly believe that. And it was my case. I felt I came out better than I came in. It just made me, learning attention to detail.
Yep.
They pound that in your head. Yeah.
Yeah. Shane and I were lucky too, because we had a really good LPO and a good CP, chief petty officer. So we had a good chain of command. As I was telling Shane before we started, the lieutenant that was in charge of our area didn't like me very much, but I had the advantage of having the captain's ear and the Admiral Schaefer at the time that ran the Office of Naval Intelligence. He was the DNI, and so I had their ear, so I could run roughshod over our lieutenant. No matter what he tried to do to me, it would just kind of went on Massafro's desk, and he would be like, "Gone, don't worry about it." So
hey, Dwayne, our LPO, what was his name again?
Well, I'm talking about Joey Moran.
Oh, Moran, Joey, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was kind of a tragic case, Joey and her husband. He they would, like, on Christmas, a couple Christmases, I volunteered to stay and do duty so other people would go home for Christmas because I'm such a nice guy. And they would take me in to their house, and I'd have Christmas dinner with them and things like that. Well, unfortunately, a few years later during 9/11, he was one of the people that got killed in the Pentagon. And she actually did not live too far along after that. I don't know exactly what happened. I just remember she got sick and died. So, and I heard from friends there, and it was one of those things where I guarantee that him getting killed in 9/11 affected her so bad that it unfortunately she lost her life too.
Well, and in the military, that's one of the things too, and it was the same in federal law enforcement for me. It was the camaraderie. So for me, I was in the public sector in between the military and federal law enforcement. But I remember when I went back into federal law enforcement, it was weird because I didn't miss a beat, because a lot of us were former military too, but it's such a family at times. You spend so much time together. You literally, there's people I know from military that I know much better, and law enforcement work much better than people in my family, because we literally spent that much time together, and you talk about a little bit about everything and get to know each other in those, and that's where I think losing someone in the military, it causes a lot of trauma in that sense, because it's just a different, it's hard to explain. I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. It's just, it's a different feeling because there's multiple facets involved. First of all, you're all there for a common purpose. Usually you're doing it for your country, you're doing it to better yourselves, but you're all thinking the same way in a way, instead of like the civilian sector where it's a hodgepodge of people working together. And your main thing, the reason you're there is for a job and a paycheck. Very few people join the military just for a paycheck. It's not the best route to go, paycheck wise. Most people have some sort of inner drawing to do something and to prove something to themselves and give back, I guess is the best way to put it. Not to say that we're all altruistic and the best people in the world, but there's a common bond that you all have, and you kind of think a lot alike, even though you have far different backgrounds. You get along differently. I just don't remember having as many, far as, things that I couldn't work out. Like I could work them out in the military. In the civilian world, I take that back. It's been a little bit of both. Bad bosses are everywhere. You can't.
They're everywhere. Yeah.
You can't avoid it. They're everywhere.
That's something that the sort of the camaraderie that you mentioned is something that I miss and that I haven't had, and you don't get that in the corporate world.
No.
You just don't, because it's just not the same. I mean, it's just different, right? And you don't have that kind of, because you're together so much, right, with the same people. I mean, I haven't seen Dwayne, 20 years, and it's almost like it doesn't feel that long.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, and that is what's cool about it. Actually, as I think about it, to me, that is the most important thing, and that's the thing I miss the most, because I don't get that anymore. Because you don't get that in corporate world. It's a little bit, you're just, I don't know what it is. I think your point was true, Gary, in terms of you're all working towards the same thing. You're spending a lot of time together, and you got each other's back.
Yeah.
Right. And in the corporate world, you don't necessarily have each other's back. People don't have each other's back, really.
No.
And it's a different, so you got to keep a certain amount of separation in the corporate world that you don't necessarily have to do when you were in the military. You can have a closer bond with people. So yeah, I miss that a lot.
How was your transition? Because I've talked about it before. I had a terrible transition from military to civilian. Of course, I'd gotten injured in BUDS in SEAL training, and then me and you actually reconnected and lived together for a time after
Norfolk.
Norfolk. Shane was on the Enterprise, and I was on the Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Shane really saw me at my worst. I was after getting out of BUDS, I was hurt. I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to get out at that point, so it was terrible. So I left when I got out and took a job. My first civilian job was in a sign company with a friend of mine. And it just, everything bothered me, from how he ran the business to how he treated me, and how he just, and it all came down. About a year later, I ended up having a nervous breakdown. It was crazy. So I had a bad transition. So it took me some therapy to get through that transition after about a year, and unfortunately that breakdown happened after the VA would say it was due to my, stress from the Navy. So I didn't get it, I didn't get any help from them. So I had to go the private route to do that. But, it was rough. I mean, and Gary obviously went into federal law enforcement type deal. So he had, a little bit more camaraderie there. But how was yours?
Yeah, I mean, it was, from that perspective, it was a little bit difficult, in terms of, missing that, sort of camaraderie and everything. But, I guess the one thing that I had going for me, is I kind of found myself in the Navy, I guess, and again, it was just serendipitous, that I did that. It just sort of, and so in that way it was lucky, and, I was very focused when I got out. And I think that helped me, because I just had a path that I was on at that point to occupy myself, and focus on during that sort of transitional period, so, it was still difficult because, here's the thing too, is, when I left and went into the military, I didn't really keep in touch with people back in Cincinnati, really, right? So, and getting back and then really not having, any of that at that point, right? Any kind of, camaraderie or anything like that at that point. So, and then all I did was I just focused then on school and work and channeled that, right, until that period, passed, and I was able to reconnect and, get a sense of community from different places, different things I was doing, school included, I guess, and work. And that, that took a good, couple of years probably before I felt really comfortable again, I guess, so.
Well, you kind of, it's basically starting over.
It is. Yeah.
And in a different world, and you're in a different place. And I'm very glad that I had that kind of gap in between, because I think if I would have went, because I got accepted to the Naval Academy prep school out of high school, and I being the idiot, I just went, well, I'm just gonna go to college, I'll just pay for it, I'll figure it out. And I, good or bad, so for me, I had that gap where I kind of got some life experience. So I had that, and then I went in, but I had two separations. I had the military, and then I had law enforcement. So I left two places, and I had the same feelings at both. It was one of those, once you leave, it's almost like this emptiness or this chapter is done. Because it's not like the civilian world where you leave.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely finite. You know, it's not.
Yes.
It's a definitely end.
Yeah, because once you leave, well, in the military, you could go back in, but the odds are you're not going to. So you leave, and that's it. You know, civilian world, I could leave a job, you know, work with a bunch of buddies, go to another job, and then decide to come right back. I'm right with my buddies again. Even in the military or federal law enforcement, if I decided, and there were people that came back like 7, 8 years later in federal law enforcement came back. Well, you're not working with the same group anymore. You're not in the same place. So you're starting fresh again. But it's one of those when you're out, especially if you discharge and you did all your paperwork, you're done. You get dishonorably discharged, you're definitely done. You're not going back. Yeah. And that's it. You leave. And I remember walking to my car the last day, and an officer said, Hey, Collins, good luck, man. And I went, yeah, thanks. I didn't even have my cover on. I took my cover. I was outside. I was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. And he even said, hey, put your cover on. I went, nah, I'm good. And just kept on going. But I remember it was a lonely walk because no one was with me. Yeah. It was my last day. We had a party. I mean, I was a total loser and everyone hated me. We had a party when I left. But it was one of those where that last day, you know, I was just walking my car. And I was like, holy shit. Now what? Yeah. You know, this is, you know, and I had second thoughts. My whole goal was to go into federal law enforcement and continue because I'd got my master's and I was done. And it was like I needed to do something else. It was time to do something else. But even then I was like, am I making the right decision? You know, should I, you know, I had commission opportunities. I commissioned later on in the reserves, but I had open opportunities to commission, to go into the JAG program possibly and do some stuff. And I was like, you know, and I'm like, but I had to get rid of that security blanket. It was one of those where if you're in the military too long, I feel, because we had guys that retired out of the military and came to work at Auto Trader. I remember this when I was in college before I'd gotten in the military, and literally they're walking, cut square corner, walk up to the boss. Sir, can I go to the bathroom? I'm going to take a head break. And they're all, what? You know, yeah, they look at you like, what are you talking about? You know, just go to the bathroom. Because you had to ask permission. We all did. We had to tell someone, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. Yeah,
you just can't disappear. You can't just disappear.
You just can't leave and walk out, you know, especially me. I was working in a vault. You know, I can't just disappear and people are looking for me. And it's one of those. So, yeah, it's just a different world. And I think that's the hard part of civilian bosses, understanding that kind of stuff. Yeah. And understanding that camaraderie. And you're probably going to be a little off for at least the first couple months at work. You're just a little strange. You got some weird quirks. You got some strange habits. You know, you probably, you know, you're used to going to the chow hall, or you have your patterns and these systems in place. And now you got to relearn everything all over again, and new relationships. And yeah, it's just totally different.
And your point about, because this was in the back of my mind too when I got out, is, you know, you stay somewhere long enough, right? What's the saying? You sort of become that thing, right? Like permanently almost, you know? And I had that, you know, because I know a few people that have gotten out after 20 years and they've served 20 years and they've retired. And, you know, that adjustment has been tough on them. I mean, really tough. You're like 40, 42, 41, whatever, and you're retired and you've been in 20 years and you get out. I mean, I was in 5 and I got out, and that was, you know, that's an adjustment, 20. And, you know, that was definitely in the back of my mind too, because it's not like you can just stay in and keep going. You have to get out eventually, you know, at a pretty young age. And I guess my whole thing is, if I was going to start over, I had to do it at 23 and not, you know, 43 or whatever, you know. And it's tough for those folks, I think, man. They serve and do, you know, and that's a hell of a thing to do, I think, to serve 20 years and, you know, retire from the military. But man, there's not a ton of support for those folks, I don't think, really.
The transition, there's nothing. And actually, we had a former Navy SEAL, Darren Isham, on good friend of mine, and he did 25. He joined at 17. At the time, I think, didn't he say he was the youngest guy to ever get through buds and become a SEAL?
Yeah.
And pretty well respected in the community, to say the least. And he got out, and I remember he got out, and I was at his retirement party thinking, holy shit, this is going at 120 miles an hour all the time. You're the tip of the spear. There is no higher. And he got out, and now he's back in working as a contractor. And we didn't get into it too much, but he said, yeah, man, I'm back. I remember what he say, I'm back with my people. I went back. Yeah. And you could tell that he was saying, I missed it. So that's a different level. You have, and I saw it on a very, very small scale, but you get hard, you can get hardened with the people that you're with. And I couldn't imagine, just in going through buds, how it felt leaving the people that I was in class with. Now multiply that 1,000 times, where you're an operator and you've been through all this stuff. And fortunately none of us ever had to do anything overseas while we were in, or or being in any combat zones. But, you just form another level of camaraderie when you're in that situation, and he's been through it, especially in special forces. So I can't imagine that transition. Well, and I would hope, I don't know, but I would hope they have a really good transition team that kind of gets these guys out, because I didn't experience that overseas stuff till I was in the State Department. And again, I was working with military, and you start to realize, because it was right back in the old fold. See, for me, it was a little different too, because I went into the State Department, which a lot of us were ex-military. And then on a lot of our jobs, protection stuff, well, we're working with military, we're working with EOD, we're working with SEALs, Delta, we're working with these people overseas. So I kind of didn't get out of the whole thing until I got out of the government. That's why I said I kind of had 2 episodes. And for me, like I said, not being anywhere near Darren's, it was rough. After I got out, I left the government at a good example, actually. I got out at 40, roughly. I was right, 40, 41. And I was like, oh shit, what do I do now? I mean, I don't know anything else. I've spent half my life in the government. At that point, literally half my life was in the government in one form or another. And I was like, oh boy. So I had to rethink everything. And not only that, but you have, I don't know if you guys experience this, but I just had a shorter tolerance towards civilians, because they just lived, I looked at civilians like they just lived in Goofy land.
Yeah, I did too.
That they just didn't give a shit about anything. Nothing really mattered. It was all about, living in a track home and having a cool car and watching stupid TV shows. And, that was about all they cared, in my mind. Don't get me wrong. That's not,
oh yeah. Right. No.
But it was what I thought. That's what I thought. And it was kind of a difficult in that sense of trying to relate to people, because the first thing I'd do is I'd size them up. And I'd think, okay, because remember we talked about the asshole factor with an interview we recently did with a former police officer. And you evaluate people. You come right up to them and you go, okay, what's this person made of? Right away. And I had to get out of that. I was like, God, stop, Gary. I'm looking at him and going, well, I could tell she's insecure. She probably has some dad issues. And I'm just, and all these things are going through my head, and I'm looking
like,
at
maybe I should date her.
Yeah. Or no, this
for a night.
This is going to go badly. It'll probably go badly anyway, knowing me. And, or looking at a guy going, okay, I'm pretty sure he's a white collar criminal. I can tell he's probably, money laundering from what I can see. And you had to turn it off. You just have to shut that shit out, because it overwhelms you and it makes you feel even more ostracized, and you're doing it to yourself. They're not doing it to you. They're not the problem. It's you. You're the problem. And me understanding that and coming to the conclusion that, hey, these people aren't my enemy. And I've heard that from other people in law enforcement, military. You start to look at civilians as the enemy. We had a term for them. God, in the military, what did we call civilians?
I know what it is, and I can't think of it.
It's the tip of my tongue. And and you'd always say, if someone, you're in the grocery store, and you go, that's just a dumb civilian. you know, because it's a different thing. You know, if you're at the commissary, and the commissary is basically the grocery store for the military, you know, you can't act the fool. Your kids can't start grabbing shit off the shelves and just start throwing it around, because someone's going to come out and go, who's your LPO, or who's your, you know, and you'll go, what? They'll be, get your kid in order, get your shit together. You just can't act the fool. Yeah. It wasn't allowed. There was different rules. You couldn't throw a tantrum. You couldn't start yelling at someone at the gas station on base just because you're pissed off. Everything had a repercussion, and it was going to directly affect you, and your family and your career path. It was a totally different world where the responsibility was far more involved. That everything, and it's kind of, I guess the best example today would be like social media. If you were to compare social media, there's no real consequences to your actions. I guess that's the only comparison I can think of. So you could be a total jackass online, and in social media, well, if you acted that way face to face with someone, they might pop you right in the nose, you know, or go tell you to go screw yourself. And that's kind of the comparison I give in this military, you know, bearing. What was that? Remember? Yeah. You were always taught military bearing. You represent the United States military. You act like a jackass, it's coming back to me. And I remember people doing something stupid out in town, and they are in their uniform, or their neighbor knew they were in the military. They would call up the command and say, I know so-and-so, they live next to me, this is what they did. And they would get in trouble from a civilian calling them in for being a dipshit and doing something stupid.
Yeah, you had to be on 24/7. I mean, you had to be right 24/7, which makes me think, you mentioned social media. I actually wonder how that's affected, you know.
Well, look at the biggest thing right now. The biggest problem they're having now is, I guess it was the Marine Corps that they got busted for sharing naked pictures of female Marines. You know, the guys would kind of coerce them to do different things, and then they ended up finding all these sites that they're posting these nude photos of them. So, I mean, you know, guys will be guys, but man, you know, that's what kind of stupidity is that? Right, and the military really has to wrap their leadership around that, try to figure out how to curb that.
My personal feeling, this is me, and people think I'm just kind of a hard ass on some of this stuff. If you're in the military, or even me in law enforcement, I didn't use any social media when I was in law enforcement. I used it to find my criminals. It was really good at finding them. Yeah. It was beautiful. People are stupid. They post all kinds of shit. And I think personally, if you're in the military, you shouldn't be able to have a social media account like that. There has to be some rule of, you know, it's only meant for family or something. There's got to be something, because it gives you too much fuel to do something stupid, even though it's kind of self-responsibility. But for me, it's not only that, but you can also disclose and do things that are harmful to other people in your command and the military and other things. There's a lot more to it if you're acting stupid on social media. If you're in federal law enforcement, you're in the military, you know, you're in the intel community, or, you know, something like the CIA. I couldn't imagine a CIA operative or case officer having a full-blown social media account saying, oh, I was just in Uzbekistan last week, where that's the region I'm assigned to. You know what I mean? And I've seen people I work with in law enforcement now, they will post shit about their job and what they're doing. And I'm going, what are you even thinking? I think if you do that, you should be disciplined, period. Your work and all that should be not allowed on social media. Zero. Matter of fact, I would even put it a step further. You shouldn't be able to mention, if you're in the military, you shouldn't be able to put that on your profile that you're in the military. You put something else, or put nothing, put zero. I don't know.
Well, I kind of hear you, because I mean, I don't know if it was the military or intelligence or what it was, but I've never had a Facebook account. I just can't really get my arms wrapped around it, because I don't see myself sharing sharing stuff about me.
I'm so jealous, Shane. I had to get a Facebook account. If you own your own business, you have no choice, because your personal.
Well, yeah, you gotta Exactly.
You have to have a business account. They made it, and this is where Facebook. I won't say anything. I'll keep it nice. I don't want to get booted off Facebook and get banned. But you have to have a personal account to get a business. I still think it's that way. You just can't open a business Facebook page or fan page.
Oh,
You have to have a personal. I may be totally wrong, but when I joined, that's the only reason I joined, is because I knew I had to start my business one. And I tell people today, if there's a couple things I would do, I'd throw my smartphone in the ocean, and I would have no social media. If I could pick two main things I could change right now, it would be those two. And people think you're just an old crusty, just turd in the punch bowl. I do not get social media. I don't understand it. I mean, I use it. Don't get me wrong. I use it all the time. I have to.
Yeah, you have to, right? Especially if you're running a business and stuff.
But on a personal level, I do not use it. Like my personal page is crickets. People will tag me and put stuff in there. I don't know the last time I posted anything in there. I don't even remember. But to me, all my friends, I either can text you, I can call you, or I can email you.
Yeah.
I don't need to share my stuff with the world and go, hey, check out, I just had scrambled eggs for breakfast. Check me out. I'm in Vegas. I'm cool. I'm just not that way. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me.
And people were blown away. People were blown away when they thought they asked me, you don't have a Facebook account? What? No. Why? I don't know. I just don't. It's just, it's one other distraction that I don't need, whatever.
It is a distraction.
I have a LinkedIn account.
Oh, I'll tell you. And I'm active on it, because, and I think different than you guys, I went into journalism. So, I was in broadcasting and I was on television and I was out there, and I did sports and I was on TV. So I think that I was used to being out there and knowing that Facebook could be a marketable thing. You have that. So I got in the habit of doing it. And then when we had kids and friends posted things about their kids, we did that too. So it's just something, I think it was more natural to me because of that background that I had. So,
sometimes I do think, am I just being the old, crusty guy or whatever, but I do have a LinkedIn account, but I have that because
that's business.
In the professional business world, you have to. That's like your resume nowadays, right? So if you don't have that, you're like, that's going to be a problem. But it's a different environment there too, right? So, and I don't, share a bunch of things there either. But yeah, I've just had a hard time sort of, and I do think, maybe I'm just being stupid about it. But it's just one more. I don't know. People spend a lot of time on it, and I just can't. I've never been able to really kind of get my arms wrapped around it, like I said. So yeah,
I'm the same way, and I fight it on the business end. And Dwayne's getting indoctrinated because he's heard me bitch about social media and how it can suck all your time. And people who know my business know, they tell me, they go, God, Gary, you're terrible at social media. You don't even really use it, do you? And I go, no, I just post updates. If I have a new blog post or, I'll put that on there. I go, but I'm not into putting, funny photos of myself and stuff. I used to do that, but I just go, then they respond. And then if you don't respond, you feel guilty. And it just turns into this huge time suck of what is the point? It's just wasting my time at this juncture. I'd rather be doing something else, and I know people who literally, especially the younger generation, I see them all the time. Literally, it's phone to face all day long. They cannot let that phone get away, and they're just on social media. They're texting social media back and forth. And we don't know yet, but I would say 10 years from now, we're going to know what the repercussions are from that, because we're becoming more and more detached. It's just like I said, people have said some pretty nasty shit to me on the internet. Not a lot, because I've told them, I go, well, if I know where you live and I'm ever around that area, I'll make sure to come find you, because that's not the way you act. And I'm not a big guy, but I'll punch you in the throat. I mean, that's just not, you just don't say that to people and hide behind a screen.
Right.
But that's part of it too, is you become desensitized to how you treat other people. And that's the part of, I've gone out and I've pissed off some people on social media too. Don't get me wrong. I did it and I went, God, I probably shouldn't have done that. But it usually wasn't, I just wouldn't go out to pick a fight. It was something that I didn't agree with. And I think between that, you start to get wound up, and then I've had friends, I'm sure you guys have all heard this, all been out of shape because they didn't get invited to a party that was put out on Facebook. I have seen this probably 100 times now, if not more. Pissed. I mean, bent out of shape, ending relationships. They won't talk to those people anymore, and I just go, wow, who cares? I mean, if they didn't invite you, maybe they just don't like you, or maybe they forgot. I mean, either way, so what, and I've seen a lot of bad feelings, and now you're getting people posting suicides, posting killing other people. And I'm like, oh my God, we are on a slippery slope.
Yeah, that was a scary thing this week. I mean, that whole thing in Cleveland was scary shit. And that's something that, now that's opened up that door, just like these mass school shootings. It kind of started out small and then it kind of ballooned, man. Now that's hopefully isn't the beginning of a trend now that follows us in another negative way.
Well, and now it spreads so much faster. So anything like this now with social media, that event was viral like that. I mean, in the old days, it would have taken you a while to hear about this. It would take a while for it to kind of get out. Now so there's a good side to it as well, because now you see child abductions. Man, those things come out right away. I mean, it is lightning speed. I get them on my phone. I don't know if you guys, I mean, I think that's how it works.
Amber alerts.
Yeah, the
Amber. Well, the Amber, but I'll get it. So I'll see it social media, I'll kick, and then I'll get it on my phone. Like it's like right away. And I'm like, that's impressive. Or that, someone is on a shooting rampage. Well, colleges use that. They're using Twitter. They're using Facebook to get it out there. So there is an upside to it. But the downside now is you're directly exposed to it, whether you want to be or not. If you're part of that Facebook group or logged in, or, you're got the Twitter group that so you can see stuff from your university, you may not necessarily want to know about or see that stuff, but you're going to be exposed to it anyway. So I think social media has taken away a lot of our innocence freedoms, to where you can insulate yourself and go, nah, la 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 la, I don't need to know about that. Now you are going to know about it almost, period. There's no escaping bad news at all.
Yeah. And there's been some studies done, and I can't name the reference here, so take it with a grain of salt, but there's been studies done that, saying that the more time you spend on, say, Facebook, there's more,
I've seen that,
depression, right? And I think the reason was because what you see on social media, typically Facebook especially, is you see the positive side of people are, they post their social side, their social media side, which is very, family life is great, right? No problems, got the new car, look at this, look what I'm doing. And you look at that and it's almost like an envy that happens, right? And you look at yourself and you say, well, I'm not doing as good as this guy is, but it sort of has that effect, I think, sometimes, because people are posting mostly the positive things that are going on, and it causes people to be, the more time you spend seeing that, and living that, the more, not for everybody, but the more depression and things, the more mood changes, things that occur.
It becomes look at me, and they've shown that you're posting to make yourself feel better, to make to show other people how great you are, even though most of the time it's not necessarily true. You're portraying something that isn't necessarily what it is. It's behind the scenes. It's not as happy as it seems.
Sure. Yeah.
But again, going back to the military, it's a tricky slope, as you could see just rabbit hole we went down with social media, just completely off topic, but it blended right into something else. Well, if you're a military member or somewhere in a sensitive position, well, now we just exposed how wide that web goes quickly.
Yeah.
And I just, for me, I don't think it's a good idea if you're in a sensitive position, just like teachers. Why a teacher is posting stuff publicly and talking about students or people they work with or other faculty negatively on social media, what are you thinking? And then they get fired and then they sue. And it's like, you are obviously not smart enough to understand that your job is a teacher. You cannot do that. You cannot criticize a student or another person and do it publicly. You just can't.
the company that I work for, we have a strict policy that you're not supposed to do that, you know? So that's why on this podcast, I don't mention who I work for. I just say I work in manufacturing. I mean, people, it's easy to figure out if you wanted to figure out, but you know, if I said the wrong thing on here, I could be terminated. That's the contract I signed.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you know, this isn't necessarily social media, but this is social medium.
It is.
And,
Yeah.
And, you know, I could be canned, so I have to be careful.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the consequences too of social media is nothing's private anymore at all.
Who was it? It was that woman that she worked for a PR firm and she was flying to Africa. She's flying to South Africa. And right before she got on the plane, she wrote something racist and put it out on Twitter. And by the time she landed in South Africa,
she was fired.
She was fired. And her phone like blew up with text messages and emails and voicemails. And it completely ruined her life, you know, just one stupid mistake. And that happens all the time. I mean, that's reality now, you know.
You could be sharing or to a group if you have a signed group or to someone else, but there's nothing in there that doesn't allow someone else to share it with someone else.
Yeah.
Once you put it out there, it's out there. I think that is the problem people are not realizing. Once you hit the internet and you start posting anything, I don't care what format it's in, it is now public consumption. You have to be really, really careful with what you're putting out there. And I'm pretty careful too. I mean, I speak my opinion, but I'd never say anything that for the most part that I'm going to regret. You know, I try and, you know, if that's the way I feel, that's the way I feel. And I expect when I say something or if I was to post something that everyone can see it. So I better not act like a complete fool. Or if I do it, I have to be able to accept the consequences that are going to come back to me. And I think my followers and in my business, people understand that I don't do anything for shock and awe. You know, I'm not doing it to be a jerk on purpose. I just telling you how I feel, or I'm giving you information that I think is useful. You know, you take it for what it is. And I've actually been pretty lucky. I mean, comparably to most people and businesses on social media, I'll get a troll here and there. But for the most part, they realize I'm not going to engage. I just don't care. And I'm just going to block them. It's like I ain't got time for this crap. And there's a lot of people on social media who crave attention and they're out trolling. That's where a troll comes from. They're trolling. They're looking for someone to get riled up, to engage and get you spun up. And they do it for a few reasons. Sometimes they're just lonely and bored and their lives are miserable and they just want to take it out on someone else. Or it's a marketing ploy. That's the one that blows my mind is people will use it as a marketing ploy because they're trying to get people to engage. But behind them, they're trying to get their links out and what they do and their business and they're selling this. They're part of this MLM. And that's, I mean, it makes me just want to bash my head into a wall. And I just don't participate. I refuse. I will not. I've had people call me all kinds of names here and there a few times. And their one thing they were trying to do was get a response out of me. It had no purpose. It was purely to get a response out of me. Nothing I put out was all that offensive. I went on a podcast that's pretty well known for some pretty idiot trolls. And the group didn't quite like me kind of thing. They didn't like my positions and a few things, which is fine. I mean, I don't go out and just hunt people for that. I mean, that's just a waste of time. So there was some weird comments and people were sticking up for me going, he didn't even say that. I mean, what's your heartburn over this guy? He was just telling his thoughts and what his philosophy was, and you're all butthurt over it. Like it directly, if whatever he said doesn't directly affect you, you just don't have to listen to or ignore it. And that's kind of how I take stuff today. I don't know about you guys, but I just ignore it.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me. Gay marriage. Who cares?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
What's that have to do with me? You know, I mean, I don't care. Why are we fighting over this? Why do we have congressional inquiries over gay? So what? If gay people want to get married, for the love of God, get married. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. And it's stuff like that, you know, that you get exposed to that it's a little weird.
Yeah, and I can't imagine being a kid now, like in school with social media. I mean, that has got to be tough. Just tough.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's hard enough anyway growing up and being a kid, but
Right.
now you put the pressures of You know, and parents that create fake accounts to troll other kids.
That is awful.
Oh my God. And kids are committing suicide based on what other parents do on their social media. I mean, that is insane. Kids are already, you know, they're mentally being formed and barely have it together. And now you're going to throw that crap in there too.
Yeah. Well, how do you guys handle that? I don't have kids. My dog doesn't know how to use the internet that I know of. Maybe he goes and looks at doggy porn. I don't know. But how do you guys handle that? I mean, how do you teach? How do you deal with your kids?
I mean, my kids aren't quite old enough yet. They're not really on social media yet. I mean, 8 and 12 are my ages. So, but they're getting there, and I don't know yet. Like, I'm not sure yet how I'm going to deal with that. Right. And
well, you're probably better off. You're probably going better now because I know kids that are that age that are
I do too,
versed in social media. So you've actually maybe unknowingly, and maybe not having that background on Facebook, you've probably done better than most parents. Yeah. As far as shielding them from that.
I mean, they can text and stuff like that, but they don't have, you know, Facebook accounts and things like that yet. So, but it's going to come eventually.
Well, one of my friends, I think his son was 9, had a friggin' blog and followers. You know, and I
probably
was
more
like,
than us.
Probably. He, you know, and I was like, okay, I don't know if I agree with that, but what limits do you put? I would be a terrible parent because they wouldn't have social media the whole time they were in my house.
Well, I mean, like my son, who is 19 months, he likes to watch Disney videos on my phone, and he knows, except for the password to get on my phone, how to go into YouTube, where to find the videos that he likes, and watch and pull up the videos that he wants to watch. Yeah. So, and my girls who are 6, they're masters of it. You know, they can pick up any tablet and get wherever they want to go. So, you know, luckily, you know, Amazon Kindles have these special kids tablets that completely block them from everything. But at some point, they're going to figure out how to get around that too. You know.
Yeah.
So you have to be diligent as a parent to stop that stuff. You know, because I think a certain amount is okay, but you really have to. If you don't set limits and supervise that kind of stuff, it can get out of control fast.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that'll force me to get a Facebook account because I'll have to get one to
monitor them.
What the hell they're doing, right? You know, so that'll be probably my, you know, that'll force me into social media a little bit, I guess. But
you'll have 3 friends and it'll be your family.
It'll be my kids and my wife. That's pretty much it. So I'm not looking forward to any of that crap. That's for sure.
Well, I think.
All right. Well, let's.
We pounded that top. We pounded social media to death. Went on a little tangent there, but that's kind of how we roll. Yeah.
So let's wrap this puppy up. You know, I think this is pretty fun, reminiscing with the friends on here, and Gary actually getting to meet Shane. That's kind of weird. You know, how you have 2 such good friends, and they've never met. You know, they may have heard of each other at some point throughout the years, but.
Because Gary, you were out in California, right? For the most part?
Yeah, I was at Miramar and then Fallon, Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of experience out in the flight world. So
everything.
You probably were around a bunch of cocky sumbitches is what you were around that probably didn't really deserve it.
Well, no, I'll tell you what, naval pilots and being attached to Top Gun, those guys were the shit. They were the shit. They were the best. And I worked with them a lot because I worked in the skiff, and they would come down because everything they did was classified, and some of the courses were taught down there. And they were, I'll tell you right now, they were good dudes. I respected every one of them. They were very nice to me. They helped me out. And by the time I left, I was more educated than most of them. And I was an enlisted guy, you know, an E4 getting out. But actually, another story of that, I went to, when I went to OCS to commission, we went out and looked at the Blue Angels. We went out because they were out at Pensacola. So we go out there and it was my a former pilot. He was now the CO of he was on the CO of and he was cool. He showed me all around, and I consider my experience with pilots to be one. I was very, very fortunate. Those guys are badass.
You didn't serve with them on a ship though. I think Shane and I both served with him on an aircraft carrier, and we got a different a different view of naval pilots.
Well, you got to remember that Top Gun was the best of the best.
Yeah.
There was, you didn't get picked for that slot if you were a shithead or a dirtbag. I honestly, there was a couple guys that I may not have liked a whole lot, but for the most part, man,
you had to respect them.
You respected him. Those guys were sharp. I mean, not a dumb one in the bunch. I mean, every once in a while, you would run into a dumb pilot here and there, just like anything else. Not those guys, man. Those guys were bright, very bright. Sometimes a little too bright for themselves. But, but they could fly. Luckily,
do they still have that? Do they still have the Top Gun stuff? Is that still?
That moved out to that's why I ended up in Fallon. We ended up the whole command. Yeah, as far as I know, it's still all out there. It's changed around and been absorbed and all that kind of good stuff. But I'm still sure Top Gun and its entity still exist. Yeah, it does. I've seen people on TV with the patches. Now I think about it on some programs. Yeah.
All right. Well, Shane, thanks for coming on today.
Right.
I think this was pretty fun, kind of getting together and talking. Everybody seemed to enjoy our first episode that we reminisced about our military days. So we want to try to come back on and bring other people on too and just talk military, because I think a lot of people, it's good for veterans to kind of listen to this stuff and realize, hey, we're not alone. You know, we're all out there and we're still a community. And so, you know, it was fun. It was fun for me. So
yeah, Dwayne,
thanks for you guys.
Thanks for having me on. Gary, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, Shane.
Good show going, guys. I haven't seen every episode. I'm behind a little bit, but some good stuff. So it's good to listen.
We're trying to pump them out. So hopefully
you guys have been on a roll. Like I can't keep up right now. So it's good.
All right, people.
All right.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will see you guys next week.